You're listening to New York's only home for Reefer Madness. Every week, we'll explore the unique perspective of cannabis in the global hub of commerce and culture. Hear the insights, stories, challenges, and successes of those blazing a path from Brooklyn to Buffalo and everywhere in between. I'm your host, Kalen Castetter, coming to you from the Green Valley of Opportunity, Binghamton, New York. This is the Empire State of Cannabis. Welcome, everybody, to another week of Empire State of Cannabis. We have a very special guest today, Senator Tom O'Mara. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Kalen. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for the listeners that don't know, actually, Senator O'Mara, was one of the original prime sponsors of the bill to bring a hemp pilot program to New York in 2015. With Assemblyman Donald Pardo. And Senator, at the time, the Republicans controlled the New York State Senate, right? Was it difficult to convince your Republican colleagues, that hemp is something to get behind?
Yeah, there was a little skepticism at first. What I like to call the old reefer madness reaction to anything marijuana related. I think I worked on it for a couple years before we got it passed in June of 2014 to get the pilot program going. And it was at that point, after working at it and explaining it, we had a unanimous vote in the Senate. So while I was the first Republican on board with it and the sponsor of the legislation, every member of the Senate, both sides of the aisle, voted in favor of this. So there was strong unanimous support to get this hopefully new industry going in New York. At that point we were, leading the country and trying to break ground on this. And it was exciting to do. And with the work of, Cornell and SUNY Morrisville and others throughout the pilot program, I think we made great strides right away, really put New York State on the map for hemp. Hopefully going to be able to continue that going forward, because I think we were one of the leaders at the outset. I think we've kind of slowed down waiting, stuck in the regulatory morass right now. So it's been frustrating since the initial enthusiasm of getting it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because we were a leader at the beginning, and we still are in some ways. If you look at the raw numbers, you don't see that. You see Kentucky and Colorado, but now we're leading with a new regulatory framework, especially for CBD, because the federal government hasn't really been acting, and with the hemp extract bill and whatnot. I go back to the beginning of the program, and actually we were the first licensed processor. We had a hemp-infused wine, the only hemp-infused wine in the United States. We spoke to the first grower a few weeks ago. And so it was really tough at the beginning, but did you see it? And you speak a lot, and so does Assemblywoman Lupardo, about manufacturing and bringing manufacturing back to this area. So, and also agriculture is big in your district. So what did you really see in 2015 in hemp? Would it have to do with manufacturing?
Yeah, it had a lot to do with manufacturing and agriculture both. Really, the industrial uses for hemp is what got me most interested in it. But getting into it and seeing all the other aspects of it for food or somewhat medicinal purposes for anxiety or what have you. The other uses, which gets into the FDA concerns with this going forward. But my initial focus, and still my focus, is what it might be able to do for manufacturing in conjunction with our agriculture community here in New York State, which is critical. And certainly our farmers struggle here in New York State like they do across the country. So anything we can do to get alternative products for them to be able to grow and market is a huge win for the ag industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we're members of the Farm Bureau, and we talk to, different farmers throughout the state, it's really important to have other options to be able to diversify your farm, especially now with what we've seen with dairy. And it's just He said it's good to have that option, but then you have to look at what's the outlet, what's the final market, right, for these products. And we had Mark Privatera on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about the potential of using it as a carbon source. An acre of hemp can power a Tesla, he says, right? But he says the infrastructure needed is we're looking at $250 million, $500 million, right? And so that investment can only come from a select amount of people in the United States. And so, from your perspective, what do you think we need to see that investment, but not just see that investment anywhere, but here in the Southern Tier?
Well, we need to see our regulatory process get completed.
Yeah,
I've been told, even though we've been through this shutdown of COVID and all hands at state government have been on deck for COVID, that the new leadership within the Department of Health that is overseeing cannabis and hemp, that really was going to be the Office of Cannabis Management that ended up getting created, that they indicate they're on track to get these regulations out to the public, hopefully this month, and get that process done. Basically, not getting it done the year before has been problematic in slowing things down. We had farmers that were gung ho that grew a lot of hemp in 2019. To my understanding, that's all pretty much being stockpiled now.
yeah,
And how long that will actually last will depend on the storage techniques and such. But one of my big concerns in this all along has been, decades ago when we had the ethanol craze for fuel,
hmm,
and all these farmers were convinced to switch to growing corn to support that industry, and then the bottom dropped out.
yeah,
And I've seen some reluctance over the years in talking to farmers and in agriculture of concerns about that type of thing happening again. And I don't think it's widespread, and it's not a number one issue they talk about, but they've been there and done that before, with kind of retooling for a new crop, even though this isn't as intensive, according to the farmers I've talked to, as it was to switch to corn and all the
hmm,
equipment necessary for that a long time ago. But we got to make sure we have the market there.
yeah,
It's a two-way street. Farmers grow crops to sell,
yeah.
and if they've got nobody to sell them to, they're not going to grow them. So we got to get this thing going quickly before farmers lose heart and aren't going to want to partake in the production of hemp that will supply our manufacturers.
Yeah, and we've seen two issues, with it 70% decrease in price from the time farmers planted last year in May to the time they harvested and were ready to sell their crops, right? And so we see two issues, especially on the extract side, that we talk about a lot. One is being able to put it in food and beverage, right? That's a huge market. But the other one that's frustrating farmers over and over again is not being able to sell their product direct to a consumer, sell their flower right to a consumer, right? What do you think about it? Do you support farmers being able to just sell that product right to consumer, make it a lot easier?
Absolutely, and it should be. The with hemp, with marijuana being classified as a Schedule One drug in the country, the real problem lies right there.
Yeah,
To classify it with heroin and LSD makes no sense in my mind. We've clearly have seen and accepted the medicinal uses of marijuana going forward. This should, at a minimum, be a Schedule Two drug, if not less. That would really help every state move forward with it if that was the case. But we're not seeing that movement by the federal government to do that. So we've got to do it in New York, and it's hard in New York or in any state to get that massive investment of millions and millions of dollars when it's a new area that technically is still breaking the federal law.
yeah,
Even though they're kind of looking the other way and giving the wink and nod saying it's okay. But, as I said at the beginning, I want to see hemp be able to really for these industrial uses that
yeah.
is had for fibers and all that. But I think the way to get to that point to where that type of hemp is readily available, I think the CBD is going to lead the way, because I think that seems to be where the price point is, so to speak, on return on investment
Yeah.
uh, for both the products and the hemp itself. And then I think you'll see hopefully the fibers and whatnot being used as a byproduct for these other industrial uses. And so we'll get really two or three industries as far as products go out of one crop or similar crops. There's different strains of this, and I'm no expert on that. But
Yeah, exactly. And you think about bioplastics too, right? You can take the waste and turn them into bioplastics, and maybe that will help. And I saw that you had a comment about in the last budget process is some of the styrofoam and the plasticine manufacturers in your district not being able to continue, and maybe hemp bioplastics is a way to do that and work within the DC. So you made an important point about marijuana and the schedule there in on the federal side and how difficult it is for the industry there. So, your district is probably one of my favorite places to be on the planet, right? I mean, you talk about WGI, I have a love for WGI, but the village of Watkins is such a special place to hang out and get some dinner. And then, you travel up the west side of Seneca Lake and all the wineries, et cetera. And what you hear too is, does adult use cannabis also fit in there from an agro-tourism perspective, from an economic perspective? What do you think? Do you think your district could use another economic driver such as, responsible cannabis for adult use?
it depends. I didn't get in the hemp movement because of my desire or anything for legalization of adult use recreational marijuana.
Sure.
Uh, I'm not strongly opposed to that, but that's not my driving force. I do have concerns with adult use and just regular recreational marijuana in regards to law enforcement,
Mhm.
driving while impaired, and employer-employee relationships on the job. Without a clear means to be able to test someone's intoxication and impairment level, that causes me concern with that as a whole. And I think, and I was the first Republican on board with medical marijuana
Sure.
as well, and I'm strongly supportive of that. I think that that's stalled right now because I think the suburban soccer moms have really been vocal
Yeah.
against this, and that has slowed down the Democrat majorities in the legislature and the governor right now. So, I'm not sure where that's going to stand. And you would think this of any year with the fiscal problems we had would be the time to push something new like that could come through with hundreds of millions of dollars in new revenue. But pushing things like this for just revenue sources, I don't think is the right way to approach it. We got to make sure that we're going to be able to handle the impacts of that industry safely
Yeah.
within our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I spent a lot of time, just talking to different called sides to the issue, right? And stakeholders and law enforcement. And, something curious for me is that, I understand there's a hyper polarized environment here in Albany, but when you hear the concerns from Republicans and from law enforcement, bringing Republicans to the table to discuss these issues, I think is important because you see the needed trainings for DREs, right? And you talk about use doesn't really go up in states that legalize. But what we see is, you drive up now 14 during the summer, you see a lot of tour buses, right? You see a lot of places where people are not driving while intoxicated with alcohol. And, I wonder if, on-premise consumption not only is good for the economy, but also is good for a safe place people can stay, maybe stay in an extended weekend, enjoy our local cuisine and then our local cannabis too. And so I think that, developing a model that's smart because it's almost, there's an air of inevitability about it, right? So,
Yeah.
bringing different stakeholders to the table, including law enforcement, which, a lot of times I hear from law enforcement, the official position is, well, we don't support it. And then I'm back to like, we know it's going to happen. We want it to be safe, right? So I wonder, bringing, more sides to the table, we can almost get past the issue of, you talk about the Long Island Six, these suburban moms, but if you brought, more from the Republican conference side to the table, a more safe, more well-rounded piece of legislation could come out. What do you think about that?
Well, certainly including both sides of the partisan aisles certainly would be helpful. in coming to a resolution and a compromise on that. But I think we need to involve law enforcement as you speak as well, just so that we go about this in a way that is enforceable and that we protect our streets. Certainly the Finger Lakes. I'm glad you said it's one of your favorite parts of the state because it's certainly mine, and I'm very fortunate to represent the southern half of the Finger Lakes from Cayuga to Seneca to Cuca to Canandaigua. I have pieces of all those lakes, and it's just fabulous. And the tourism industry that we've developed is certainly great, and I want to make sure that we foster that and do things that are helpful for that. I just don't know where or how legal cannabis falls into that equation.
Mhm.
But I certainly think that because of the really relaxed and laid back atmosphere we have in the tourism industry through the Finger Lakes, that would, I think, be an enticement to some to come to partake in that tourism, and certainly with our agriculture industry. I'm concerned with adult use marijuana and the growing of it. I don't foresee that's going to be able to be done by our rank and file farmers throughout the district. I think it's
Mm.
pretty much going to be grown in big indoor complexes from everything I've seen and read about it. So I don't think that really benefits our local agriculture to that extent. But to get back on hemp for a second and the investment in that, 2 years ago, I had investors in companies from Europe quite regularly contacting the office and contacting economic developers in the southern tier, the counties that I represent, on sites to locate and to utilize local farmers for growing of the hemp, to locate their manufacturing facilities near to where it's being grown. And there was a lot of optimism and that's waned
Yep.
over the last year and a half. So really, that just stresses the importance of the regulatory process.
Yep.
And a saying I have for New York, unfortunately, is in New York, we're either first or we're last, and it's usually for the wrong reasons.
Yep.
So it's very frustrating when regulatory processes get drawn out. When I was chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee, they're always reviewing and planning and looking at everything. And after about a year in that position, I had to forbid the commissioner and his staff from using the word soon because they clearly didn't grasp what the word soon meant, because
Mm.
everything we talked about was that's going to happen soon. And soon sometimes is 3 years.
Yeah.
So that part of it is very frustrating. Uh, Certainly from a legislative perspective, when we pass laws and we want to get them implemented and get the benefits of what we're trying to do here with the hemp industry, and to see it slowed down and not come into real life scenarios is very frustrating to us and to businesses looking to invest in New York State.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly frustrating, and we hope that some regs get released here in the next month, because everyone's waiting, and they're waiting patiently, and they're saying, okay, we're in New York adhering to a higher standard than other states, and an important part of the regs and the bill, hemp extract bill, that Senator Pardo pushed hard, even in the face of opposition from these national trade groups, was saying, if you're going to sell in New York, you're going to, have manufacture and label to the same standards as we do. Level the playing field, right? And we hear this over and over again. But I do want to talk about, I think this ties in adult use, hemp, et cetera. We talk about small farmers, talk about, medium size. A farmer is a business, right? They do everything from the accounting to the PR work to the higher, and they're some of the most talented businessmen I've ever met. So how important, though, is it to support small, medium-sized businesses? Because we've also had this, interest from, out of state, out of country. We had a canopy facility go up that never actually ended up going up here in Binghamton, right? We've had a lot of these stops and starts in the hemp industry. And what you see in successes is these homegrown small businesses, the entrepreneurs that grow in and they hire people, they, give back to the community. I think too, there is a place for small farmers in the adult use cannabis space, only if the regulations and the lawmakers see that and push hard for it, right? Because or else you're going to get these monopolized groups who they're going to do business in New York and send the wealth elsewhere, right? So how do you see, and this could be, beyond just cannabis regulations, but how do you see really supporting small, medium-sized businesses in the hemp industry? Because we get a chance here as we're starting a new industry, and let's do it with New York entrepreneurs and New York businesses.
Absolutely, and that's my foremost group that I'm looking out for. It is the small farmers, the family farms in New York that struggle year in and year out. And you talk about the farmers, as you said, doing everything from bookkeeping and accounting. They grow it, they sell it, they run the business. There's no stronger group in an industry with a good common sense than the farming industry and the
Mhm.
farmers that I've known over the years. They're practical. They understand that it takes hard work to do this, and I think that helping as much as we can for those farms to be involved in this process has to be the biggest area where we can have a big win in that. And, you talked there a second about the Donna Lapardo's efforts, and I worked very closely with her and on this extract bill. And I want to commend the Department of Ag and Markets and Commissioner Ball
Yeah.
over the years. He's been a real staunch supporter of this and trying to move this along. But to get it with this labeling requirement so that we can, first of all, establish for the consumer, they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
But if we can have product that's labeled grown in New York or the other ag labels that New York is ag and markets is pushing right now. Buy local is a huge driver in sales right now, no matter what the product is, and that's something that's going to help. And this labeling process, when we get it done, it's going to be a huge benefit, uh, and it will help getting New York based products, the hemp itself, into the market stream to be able to earn that grown in New York label that I think will be very beneficial.
Absolutely, yeah, and Commissioner Ball has done an excellent job, and I had the honor of speaking at the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture back in February, their policy summit, and the commissioner was there, and you don't have a stronger advocate for New York that I've seen than Commissioner Ball, right? And New York products and agriculture, it's really impressive, and you talk to, we do a lot of analysis of the European market and importing, and they always put New York products, especially New York dairy products, on a higher level than any other state. And I think a lot of that has been the initiatives by the commissioner. And so, to your point about the farmers, I think there's a lot of farmers who are looking at hemp and they're looking at cannabis in general, right? So they grew hemp for hemp extracts, they understand cannabis, and they're saying, we can do this, we know how to do this. And they're scared to death that there's this, slow but large moving piece of momentum driven by the medmens and all these large companies that are saying, okay, New York is the greatest marketplace for cannabis in the world, whether that's, hemp or adult use, right? And they are scared, the farmers are scared, small business are scared that they're just going to get eaten up by these big companies. And so, to hear you say that's great. And especially if you can go to get some of your colleagues and say, hey, why don't we listen to these farmers and these small businesses and see how we can shape overall holistic approach to cannabis. You talked about the Office of Cannabis Management at the beginning. I think that's key, right? We need a central regulatory body who understands cannabis and not, regulators who might not really get what they're saying, where you have products that are being prevented from being hit the market for no logical reason when you have competitors from out of state flooding the market.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem, and I've been uh, outspoken about this, is lumping all three of these cannabis issues together, whether it's
Hmm.
medical marijuana, adult use, or hemp. Uh, I think they're being slowed down, both the medical side and the hemp side, on this adult use argument that we don't know when that's ever going to be resolved
Hmm.
in New York State. I would agree with what you said earlier. It's probably inevitable that it's coming to New York, but we're not there right now. And I think the more we associate hemp with marijuana, it keeps them in lockstep together is for the reason that hemp was first banned back in 1971, I believe,
Yeah.
for no logical reason in science or in medicine, because hemp is not marijuana. It technically doesn't have the psychoactive effects of the THC levels that marijuana has. So I think I've been pushing to let's just focus on hemp,
Yeah.
um, and have other people focus on the medical side of it, for what we should be allowing it for, and whatnot. But really, let's focus on hemp and get that going because it's an industry that many states are pursuing. Kentucky, they may still be the leader in it. I don't know today who's in front, but I know we were right up there in the top 3 or 4, kind of at the outset of this 5, 6 years ago. And it's frustrating to see the process take so long and so slow. But I'm hopeful that they're being honest with me and with Assemblywoman Lombardo that they're on track to get these regulations out and get them in place because we need that to get the investment that we're going to need. You talk about the MedMens and the other large corporations, and certainly our local and smaller farmers are leery of dealing with large corporate entities. They feel like to get the heavy hand or don't get a fair deal. And we got to make sure that we look out for that in the process because the industrial side of this, the processing side of this, is going to take some massive investments
Yeah.
to get going. So you're going to have these large corporate entities and that side of it at least, because that's who's going to make the investment in building plants and investing in the equipment to process this product.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk a little bit before we wrap up about industrial because like you said, it is a massive investment. And as I said earlier, that Mark Privatera said, talking about $250 million. Now, you have been named most conservative award in the Senate, right? And so how
Yeah.
do you obviously your philosophy to attracting businesses is different than the governor's, but there's also been some crossover. We had success, right? You got rid of the franchise tax on large corporations. You're looking for that for small and mid-sized firms. But how do you
Yeah.
see being able to attract that sort of investment and that sort of business to upstate? If you were able to draw up a plan, what sort of things would you include in that?
For hemp, are you talking,
Yeah, for
or
industrial hemp. So let's say someone, we're going forward and we want to grow, thousands of acres of fiber hemp to, like I said, you got to decorticate it, turn it into a carbon source, turn it into batteries. How do we see that investment in Elmira, in Binghamton, in Syracuse, in these places that have been former manufacturing hubs, right? How do we bring that back with hemp? How would you like to see that?
well, we need a clear regulatory framework to be able to operate it, and one that the industry will see as stable and not a moving target as far as whether something's going to change in 6 months or not. I think is the bottom line. The hemp industries, the companies that I've met with, they're not looking for large state economic development handouts
Yeah.
for this. These are established European entities that have the wherewithal and don't need it. So what we need is a clear regulatory structure. And we have an industry here that is willing to work with the regulators and set up a system that works. I think in New York, we always leap the leadership always leaps towards over-regulating things. And then when you get an industry that wants to get involved in the regulatory process, the leadership kind of goes, um, what's up with this? What are we
Yeah.
missing here? That they're willing to go along with this. But the industry really sees it as a benefit to have a strong process, so that, particularly with the hemp labeling bill, you're going to have a quality product. You're going to keep the fly-by-night operators out of the industry, and you're going to get a good, consistent product that the customer can rely upon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how often do you really see an industry say we need more regulations, right? And that's what we're seeing. And it's going to be a process, though. These regulations are going to come out, and there's going to be problems. Like I said, we're looking at, can farmers sell hemp to consumers? Can we sell, food and beverage CBD products in New York? So, I think moving into next session, there's going to be some more work to do. So, I'm
Well, there's always work to do, and I think my perspective on being able to sell it to any consumer and basically sell it at a farmer's market. If you can establish that, at least under the current legal circumstances, that the THC level is below acceptable limits, then you ought to be able to sell it from your farm stand on the road in front of your farm if you want to. That's my
yeah.
perspective. Let's make it as free and an open market as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the industry will strongly agree with you there. And so, thank you so much, Sandra, for coming on. Those are some really fascinating insights, and look forward to having you on again, and seeing what more we can do, and if there is some deficiencies, seeing next session what the industry, what yourself and Assemblyman Lupardo and the governor's office come together and see what we can do to continue to improve upon the industry here.
Absolutely. I'm willing to help. I've been pushing this for 6 or 7 years now. It's a big interest of mine, and I'm looking forward to working with all sides of this to get a flourishing industry here in New York, and hopefully it benefits the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes region.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Sandra.
Thanks, Caitlin.